Hello and welcome to your fourth tutorial on JavaScript. Today we'll learn that nothing is hard in programming. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some more functions and objects, and you'll just see what we do when we start the lesson. And so let's go ahead and start. And as you see, I've already added in some things such as a div with the ID C1, and I've added in a button tag with the onClick event or attribute, whatever you'd like to call it. And I'm preparing to make a function in my JavaScript code, and so I've just named it F1 and I've added in the brackets and I've closed my button tag. So what we're going to do is inside of our script tags we're going to write a function. Go ahead and type in function and F1 as we have named it in onClick F1, and go ahead and open your curly braces. So inside, let's go ahead and type in our variable, so var, and the keyword will be car just for now. Let's add in a equal sign, and what we're going to do is we're going to add in a object. If you think about it, everything is an object, right? So a car is an object, a table is an object. So we can add in the object type, so the car type. And let's say we're talking about a car which is a Mazda. We can give it its model properties as well, and let's say the model is RX8. And so after adding in its model, let's go ahead and type in its color as well, so color, and let's say carbon. And if you're familiar with cars and other cars or whatever, you can go ahead and type in different types of cars or models and colors, etc. And so let's add something so that when we click on the button, we will get the type of car in the div. And so for this, we're going to write in our document get element by ID. Just do it after your object, document dot get element by ID. And so we want our div which is C1, so we're gonna write C1 here, and I made a mistake here. As you remember, JavaScript is case sensitive, and when we write C1, let's go ahead and add in inner HTML. Let me make this a little bit small like this, and when we write inner HTML, let's add in its value as well. And so we want the type of car to be displayed in the div. We're going to type in car.type. It is as simple as that. And let's also add in some text to our button. So show type property. And let's go ahead, save, refresh. As you see, I have my button which says show type property, and when we click on it, we're going to get the type of car which is Mazda. So we got our type of car in the div. So one more time, just so you understand. So in real life, a car is an object, and a car has properties like weight and color and methods like starting and stopping, etc. And so imagine it just like that, and this is how we use the object. And so as you saw, we only got the type of car, and let's say we want to get something else. All we have to do is, let's say we want to get the model of the car, we just write model. Now save and refresh. As I click on my button, I get RX8, which is the model of car. And let's move on and let's duplicate our divs. So let's have 3 divs, and let's change their IDs to C1, C2 and C3. And let's go ahead and use CSS for this part. So go ahead and open up your style tags just like this. So inside of our style tag, we're going to give some design, let's say, to our divs. So go ahead and write div, open and close your curly braces. Yeah, we're just going to give some properties to our divs. So let's start off with float, and let's make it left. Let's add in a border of 2 pixels, and let's make it dotted, and let's say we'll make it pink, for example. And let's also just add in a margin so it doesn't touch the corners of my website, and let's make this one VW. And so to also know which is which, let's add in some text to our divs. So the first one shall be type. Let's make the second one model, and let's make the third one color, just like this. And let's go ahead and save, refresh our page. Now as you see, I now have type, model and color in borders right next to my button. And let's say I want to click the button, I'm gonna get the type property. However, the type is actually, as we see right here, Mazda. So as we see, C1 right here, which is our first div, is named as type. However, the type is actually Mazda and not RX-8. RX-8 is its model, just like we see right here. And so let's solve this problem. And so in the var car object, we need to make car model C2. So as you see right here, C2 is model. So change this with a C2. And then let's go ahead and duplicate this line like this. Let's change car, and let's go ahead and change this with C1, and this is going to be the car object's type. So change this with type. Let's duplicate it one more time like this. Change this with C3, and so I made it a little bit smaller. And so as you see, I have my C1, C2 and C3 just as I have listed in my div. So type, model and color. Now let's go ahead and save, refresh. Now if we click on the button, so we have Mazda and we have RX-8 and we have carbon. So our type, model and color. And so let's go ahead and make a comment just above function, just so we know what we're dealing with. And let's go ahead and type in JS objects and properties, just like this. And let's go ahead and comment on two of these divs. So we can do this, and let's close it here, and keep your third div and the button. And let's also comment on this like this. And so the reason why we didn't delete our button tag is because we're still going to be working with function. So go ahead and create another function, and I'm gonna write function f1. You could have just copied the top part, it doesn't really matter. And let's go ahead and create a variable. So our variable keyword, let's say, is T1 for example, and what we're gonna write is just, let's say, hello world. And let's also add in a document get element by ID, and the ID will be our div. So C3 dot inner HTML, and the value will be T1. And what we're going to do is we're going to add something new, which is a new function, and it's called length. So let's go ahead and refresh. And so as you see, I get a number which is 11. So you might ask what this number is. This number is basically the amount of characters right here. So in hello world, it also, by the way, counts the space, and so we have 11 characters right here. And let's say if I were to add 2 more spaces and now we were to save, refresh, I will get the number 13 as I just added 2 spaces. So we get this number by using the length function, and we get the number displayed in our div. And by the way, the length function can also get the number of characters in the div, so in the color word basically. So what we can do right here is just we can actually copy this, copy, paste, and we can just get rid of this part, and if we were to save and refresh, this number will turn to a 5, as in color there's only 5 letters. And if I were to add, let's say, an exclamation mark, save, refresh, it will turn to 6. And so let's go ahead and move on, and let's just comment on these lines, and let's also just copy this, paste it inside of div, and instead of using our t1.length function, let's go ahead and use something else, which is called a boolean. And what we can write in its brackets is something like 10 bigger than 5. So boolean basically gives us the opportunity to find out if something is true or not, and it only has 2 values, basically true and false. And as we see, this, so 10 is bigger than 5, is definitely true. And if I save and refresh, and if I click on show type property, I will get the word true, as 10 is bigger than 5. And if we want to see the opposite, we can just change the symbol the other way around. So this is obviously false, and we should get a false right here, just like we do. So in the div, we get a false due to our boolean. And so boolean might kind of seem familiar, as we can do the same exact thing with statements, just like we learned in one of our old lessons. And just for your information, boolean and other methods in JavaScript are really important. We might not use them all the time. However, it will be important for you if you're making a web application or anything that uses JavaScript. And boolean is also a data type. So what we can do is we can just easily type in if, and let's go ahead and copy this, paste it here, and let's add in brackets like this, curly brackets, and inside let's go ahead and type in documents dot get element by id, and inside let's write our div, which is c3, and let's add in a dot inner html, and its value will be true. And if the statement is true, we'll get something that says that it is true. And so just so that we see the difference, let me just get rid of this, and let's write something else besides true, so something like correct, just so you don't mix it up. So save, refresh, if I click on the button, and I get nothing, as this is false. So I can do the same thing with else, just so we get the opposite way. And let's say if I were to change this back around, save, refresh, I will get the word correct, as this is actually true. And let's continue with our else statement, which is basically in the case of a incorrect or false statement. I can just copy this, copy, paste it here, and let's change this for incorrect. Let's save, refresh, and I still get correct, as it is correct. However, if I change it back to 5 is bigger than 10, which is obviously false, I will get the word incorrect in my div. And we can change the values around, so I can type in 2 equal signs, and if I save and refresh, I'm going to get the word incorrect, as 10 is obviously not equal to 5. They're not equal. And if I change 5 with a 10, I'm going to get the word correct, as 10 is equal to 10. So 10 is basically the same as 10. There's no difference. And so let's go ahead and move on. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment on this code. We do not need it. However, you can still keep it in the file. And before moving on, let's go ahead and add in a p tag. And so let's do it right after our divs. Go ahead and type in a p tag, and let's give it a ID, and let's just give it p1 for example, and we can write hello world exclamation mark, and let's go ahead and close our p tag. So in our HTML we made a p tag with the ID p1 which says hello world. And then let's move on to our function, and in our function let's go ahead and create a variable, and in our variable let's just give it the keyword str, which is string for example for short, and let's go ahead and type in a document get element by ID, and we need to change this to P1, so the ID is P1. And let's also make another variable, and let's just change the keyword to something like txt, and we're gonna change this part. So what it's gonna be is it's going to be str, so our variable, and we're going to use something called replace, which basically is self-explanatory. So str is our variable and replace is our function. So this is something new that we're using, and let's add in brackets, and inside we're going to write the word hello, and let's add in a comma, and let's write another word for hello, so something like hey, for example. And as you see, we just made a different string, so 2 values basically, as I mentioned in one of our old lessons. And so in our P1, let's get the txt variable, and we do this by just typing in document get element by ID, and its ID will be our P1, and we're gonna write dots inner HTML, and it's going to be at the txt variable. So let's go ahead and try this, save, refresh. As you see, I get this, which says hello world, which is actually our variable txt. And as we have added in a string of basically a replace function, and as we have added in a replace function right here, and we've added in a string which says a different synonym to hello basically, if I click on my button, you see that it just changed to hey world and not hello world. If we want to see that one more time, this says hello. If I click on the button, I'm gonna get hey. And so let's discuss this so that you understand it better. So in the beginning, we're taking our P1 variable's value, then in the txt variable we search for hello right here. So basically this was the P1 variable str, and then we search for hello, and when it is found, it replaces using the replace function, and it changes to hey. Then by doc gets element by ID P1 with the ID P1 and inner HTML, we send it to our txt variable, so we place our changed text. And let's go ahead and move on, and we can comment on these lines. They're not going to be useful. Now let's go ahead, and when we've commented on our code, we still do need this, so the variable str, we can copy it, paste it here, and let me just make some spaces. And so once again, let's take the value of our P1 using this example, and we're going to search for the p tag ID P1, which says hello world, and if it is available, we'll place it in the div. So let's go ahead and try this. So we're just going to add in, let me add in a space here, and we're just going to add in a document get element by ID, which is going to be C3, which is our div, and inner HTML. And what we're going to do here is we're going to select our word, which is hello, using some slashes, and I'm going to type in the word hello right here. Let's make it a capital, as that is how it's written, and I'm going to write a dot test and str. Let's go ahead and save, refresh, and now if I click on my button, I'm going to get the word true, which means that it actually did find the word hello in hello world. And as we see, true is displayed in the C3 div. And so if we want something like an alert or a checker or something that says we actually have found the word, what we can do is we can add in a if statement, and we can just copy this, or we can just cut it out of here, and inside of brackets let's paste it, open your curly braces inside of the curly brace. Let's go ahead and type in document dot get element by ID. We're gonna write our C3, which is the div, which is going to equal to and we need to add in dots inner HTML, which will actually equal to, let's say, found, so the word was found. And we can also do the same thing with else. We can just copy this, paste it here, and we can write not found, as it possibly wasn't found. We need to also get rid of this and save and refresh, and if I click on the button I'm going to get the word found, just like you see right here. If I would change hello with hey, if I would save, refresh, click on the button, I will get something that will say not found. So this is due to our else statement. And now let's go ahead and add in a input. Let's go ahead and put our ID right after this. Type in input and let's give it a ID, and let's write I1 for example, and before our if statement let's go ahead and add in a variable which will be IMP, which stands for input basically. And let's go ahead and type in document dot get element by ID, and its ID will be I1, so the input, and I'm going to type in dot value, and let's add in a space after it, and we're going to write a var imp1, so input 1, and I'm going to use a new function which is called regexp, which stands for a regular expression. And so I forgot to mention that .test is basically a method or a function, whatever you'd like to call it, and we're going to be needing the regexp function, and in its brackets let's go ahead and type in imp, so to put inputs in the if statement like this. And if I go ahead and save, refresh, you see that I now have a input. And if I write hey, and if I click on my button, I'm gonna get found. So the word hey was found. If I write something like what's up, and if I click on the button, I'm gonna get not found. So this is due to my statements as well, and I'm using the test function with the regexp function, which is regular expression, just like I mentioned. So our input is put in a string, so the hey world parts, and if I only write the word hey, I will get found, so in the case of if. And so yeah, that was all that I had prepared for today. Thank you so much for watching.